Welcome to another episode of Back to Life, Stories of Resilience. I'm your host, Danny Bader, best-selling author, entrepreneur, and a strong source of support for you as you travel this wonderful journey called life. We bring you powerful perspectives from people of all walks of life that have overcome challenges and traveled their own path of resilience to come out the other side and create lives of happiness and fulfillment. You're sure to be inspired and get some great takeaways that you can begin to apply in your life to create more happiness and more fulfillment. Because that's what you're here for, right? Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 38 of our Back to Life podcast. You are going to enjoy my guest on this podcast. Her name is Jacqui Clark, and she was introduced to me by a friend, and my friend said, listen, you really got to talk to her. I think you're going to have a lot in common. So we scheduled an introductory call, and it was obvious to me after 2 minutes, and then after 60 minutes, that I wanted to have Jacqui on the show, and I thought she would bring a tremendous amount of value for you as a listener. So here's Jacqui Clark. She's a certified senior advisor. And over the last 20 years, Jacqui spent time as the director of publicity for Hay House. And those of you that don't know, Hay House is the largest self-help publisher in the world. She launched over 1,000 books, including over 100 New York Times bestsellers. And she worked intimately with the founder, Louise Hay, and also one of my favorite authors and speakers of all time, who passed away several years ago, Dr. Wayne Dyer. So she's going to talk about her relationship with both of those phenomenal people. She later opened up a boutique PR and marketing firm. And then in 2014, she turned her PR skills towards senior care placement with a company called Care Patrol that she started. Jacqui is proud to help aging adults and their families with assisted living and memory care placement. She educates and advocates on complex age-related challenges, and she inspires people to see solutions in the aging adult space unknown to them. Bringing purpose and order to an otherwise chaotic time has been the greatest gift Jacqui often shares with her clients. Her and her husband Cameron have been married for 20 years. They have 2 teenage daughters. They adore the beach and watching the sunsets from their home in Southern California. Now, here's something really cool about Jacqui, too, when I looked at her website. Her favorite quote from the late, great Robin Williams is, "No matter what people tell you, words and ideas can change the world." Also, she says, why I love my job. She says this, "To make a difference in someone's life is a great gift. To give them peace of mind and to earn their trust as they navigate one of the most challenging times of their life is humbling. And to provide a solution where they thought there was none is quite simply a joy." So you want to hang around and listen to this. You want to share it with your friends. Make sure that you download this podcast because we are going to talk about what Jacqui calls aging well. And I think you're going to hear an awful lot about this in the next years coming. Here's why the baby boomers, and I'm just on the edge of that, are turning 65 years of age at a remarkable 11,000 people a day. She's also going to talk about her relationship with Wayne Dyer and the insight that he had, and also working with Louise Hay, the founder of Hay House. She's going to ask, what does aging well look like, and how does getting comfortable with death and talking about dying lead to a happy and more fulfilled life? So you're going to want to stick around because, listen, here's the thing. If you're listening to me right now, you are alive. And whether you're 30 or 40, 50, 60, in your 70s, there are things that you can do. There are ways that you can live, principles that you can practice that will contribute to you aging well. So stick around and welcome my guest, Jacqui Clark. So hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of our Back to Life podcast. As I mentioned in the preview here, I'm really excited to have our guest today, Jacqui Clark. So Jacqui, thank you a lot for coming on and look forward to chatting with you.
Really excited to be here.
Yes, and you're coming to us from where?
From sunny San Diego, California.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I'm sure you're enjoying that. So listen, Jacqui, I gave your whole bio in the beginning here so folks kind of know where you are and where you came from. But just give us a quick little snapshot into your professional career early on. What did you do? Who'd you work for?
I was a publicist. I was the director of publicity for Hay House Publishing, Louise Hay, her publishing company, 14 years right here in Carlsbad. I had the amazing experience. I felt like, well, how lucky to be paid to work with so many amazing authors. I feel like I should have paid with them. It changed my life over the 14 years, coming in contact with so many great speakers and authors and just amazing people.
Right.
And from then, I ran my own PR company for about 4 years. And then because of my mom, she had dementia for 12 years and she passed in 2019. I saw a huge need for the whole aging process. So I jumped into Care Patrol, which is helps seniors find assisted living, independent living, memory care in 2014. And that led me, I thought it was just about finding a location geographically, but really it was about the entire aging process and how we're so unprepared for it. And we just are sort of thrown in it to the end of our life. And it's a lot of times a terrible experience. So I decided I wanted to do this better. So I formed with some friends, Aging Well Partners, which is a one-stop shop for the best resources and experts to help you age well. Also, another component of it is not just at the end of your life, but I started seeing the daughters, the wives, the in-laws, whoever it was that was helping the person at the end of their life, their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, that they were having this wake-up call of, I need to live better. I need to age well better. I need to just figure it all out, because how happy you are at the end of your life will depend on what you're doing in the earlier part of your life.
Right. And so many of us just take that for granted, right? In our 20s and 30s and 40s, we're indestructible and we don't worry so much about finances and how fast that's going to come. So would you say, Jacqui, I mean, this is great work that you do. Would you say that the catalyst in many situations for people is they need a place to go?
Right.
And that's what they think they need. And then once you get there, it's kind of like peeling the onion and going, well, this needs to be addressed. A lot of other things. Is that how it happens?
Yeah. So, usually I have a family member call me saying, my mother's wandering in the neighborhood and somebody's calling me, or my father can't get out of bed, or he's losing weight, or there's a variety of things. And basically, had they put the right things in place earlier, they might have lived better, longer, or just more vibrantly. And so a lot of times, like, I think my mom needs memory care, or I think my dad needs in-home care to help. But there's so much more that's going on. The relationships, no one knows anything about the finances. They've never done a will. There wasn't anybody assigned to be durable power of attorney. So you're sort of stuck. And a lot of time, it's the daughter, 40, 50 years old, in the sandwich generation. And they are stuck raising a family, having a career, taking care of an aging parent. And a lot of times we see aunts and uncles come into play, and nobody has any type of map because nobody's planned. And it's just, we're just turning corners and trying to figure it out. So I try to get in there and I try to work with families to stop the fighting, figure out the finances, figure out the resources, figure out what this person who's aging wants in life. And then when all that has been figured out, a lot of times I find myself over the last 7 years checking in. I always check in with my clients, but it's the daughter who's 30 or 40 or 50, or the son, or saying, gosh, Jacqui, you really helped me. And it really was about, I listened, and it kind of gave them a wake-up call. You make a great point in Back to Life, your book, which was fabulous, by the way. I really could relate to it. That you said, your character was at, 40 or 50, you have this moment of, what have I done or haven't done? And look where my life is. I'm telling you, if you don't make any changes then, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s get 1,000 times worse. I think one of the most prolific statements anybody ever made to me was an 82-year-old man said, nobody tells you how hard it is to age. And I was like, I don't want that to be my statement in life at 80.
82, and that was his summation of his years, is nobody told me how hard it was to age.
Yeah, because he hadn't done it well.
So what would you say then, and you talked about a couple different areas of life, let's kind of drill into those a little bit. For all of our listeners right now, whether they're 30 or 40 or 57, like me, and or they've got parents now that might be moving into that area that you're describing so well, what are 2, 3, 4 main areas that we should really address as we move into aging?
So that's a great question. That's one of the things we tackle on our Aging Well Partner site, is that we want you to think about, there's several areas. One is your health. Right. How are you aging? Do you never exercise? Are you eating poorly? It's those typical things we've all we've all heard about. Also, are you happy in your career? Do you have a career? Do you need to pursue a different passion? Should you make a change in?
So first of all, let me jump in because I know
Yeah.
just to kind of slow people down. First of all, it's just a self-care, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's move
100%.
more, eat less, eat healthy less. Anything else that would go into there? I mean, it's got to be stretching. I know in the past couple of years, I've been stretching a whole lot more because, I work out, but I just work out. I don't stretch. And I thought sometimes I've tried to move and I'm like, oh my God, I used to be able to like bend over and, put my palms on the floor back in high school. And so what else in that self-care world should people be doing? Not at 60 and 70, but even as we approach that.
I would say I've looked at like how people age for 7 years, and my centenarians and my 90s,
Right.
the ones that get there. And usually if you're there, it's not because you're super sick. It's because you've been super healthy.
Right.
I would say a great mental state. And I say like meditations and connections with people.
Yeah.
I have to say, I've never seen such depression and lack of thriving in the last year because our personal connections are so important. Having dinner with people, shoot, having a glass of wine or your favorite tea, just connections, purpose. Oh my gosh, purpose, connections, hobbies, passions. Those are probably even more important than making sure your diet is absolutely pristine. It's
Right.
those personal connections.
Yeah, I know that shows up. You and I talked about in our first conversation, that book, the Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, which is a reflection on people, their life. And one certainly is, I think it's number 3 or whatever, but they're all very important. I wish I'd stayed in touch more with my friends.
Yep.
And I think that's so many studies out there, right, about the social aspect of us as human beings.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very tough to see someone completely by themselves, and especially if they've been married, maybe they're divorced and they have several kids. And yeah, you're like, how do you not have anybody willing to visit you right now in your life? And at the beginning, I'd be like, oh, these people are just terrible. They're not visiting their father. But then after spending 2 months with someone, you start realizing that they've made distinctive choices in their life that have put them there. And it's incredibly sad.
Yeah.
It's not the way I just living in Southern California. And I know that you like going to the coast on the east side, on the East Coast. My husband's from back east, so I've had the pleasure of I spent a lot of time on the East Coast, especially in Maine in the summer. It's wonderful. But that connection for me is so important in the water. And you kind of have to find out what gets you thriving in life, what makes you feel invigorated and want to pursue your passions. And for me, it's salt water. I mean, just find the ocean, and I love a sunny day. Even if it's a cold day, I love a sunny day. So you got to kind of figure out what's making you going to thrive that last half of your life, because we are living longer than ever. It doesn't mean just because we're living, doesn't mean we're living well.
Yeah. Well, you remember from my book, our character, Paul, who was body surfing, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is before our conversation. I wrote it 9 years ago. He's in his 70s out body surfing. And he's the one that says there's a hell of a difference between just living and being fully alive.
Absolutely.
So I think you're describing that fully alive nature. So in terms of self-care, it's the nutrition, obviously, the exercise, the movement, the social aspect. And then you started to dabble into the relationships, not just with friends, really, but with family. So what happens? What are some of the things we really need to keep an eye on in the families as we age well and as some of our parents are aging?
I think there's two sides of it. The first side is as a person aging, let's say your parent, your loved, your partner, whoever it is, you need to respect, even if they're cognitively declining or they're physically they have a lot of challenges. And you need to give them respect. They're still a fully functioning adult. And I always try to remember my mom the whole time, because she with dementia, you're taking care of them at the end like a child, obviously.
Sure.
I always tried to give her as much respect as soon as because at first we were knocking heads, my sisters and I, with her, because we cared and we wanted her to do this, to stay healthy and kind of to age and to kind of go out the way we thought she should do. But I realized the day I made peace and said, everyone has the right to die the way they want to. And some people are going to do it bad, and some people are going to do it just their way. And so as soon as I embraced letting my mom own the way she was going to go through this disease, not the way it should be maybe, or our relationship changed. And it was an amazing relationship. And she trusted me. And it wasn't this pushback anymore because she knew I was going to respect the way she wanted to do it.
Yeah. Everybody should get to choose the way they want to die. That stops you a little bit and gets you thinking.
Oh, it does. And the other part is it's an exciting topic because I get to see people at the most amazing point in their life. I mean, to hear the stories and to see an entire life filled with ups and downs. Oh, I know what I was going to tell you. Yeah. So the other thing is you need to figure out the financial and the legal aspect of dying is complicated. And if you don't plan, you really are putting an immense burden on whoever's left figuring it out. And the court really doesn't care. So that's an important aspect. But also, I think healing your relationships.
Yeah. So what's the finance? What's the big thing? Just kind of the will?
So the will, and here's the thing.
Saving money if you can as you're old, so that, when you go, there things are taken care of, paid for. You won't put a burden on somebody else. Long-term care, certainly, if we can plan to have that covered if we need it.
Right. I mean, here's
a will. We should all have a will.
Absolutely have a will. I mean, if people go, oh, I don't have many assets, everyone should have a will. A will just to say that painting on the wall goes to Aunt Sue. I mean, the fighting is unbelievable.
I mean, we should have a will probably. I know I was remiss in getting one. We have one now. And this conversation is causing me to think I probably need to update it.
Every 5 years.
But every what?
Every 2 to 5 years, you should look at it. Or if you were diagnosed today with some disease that is going to be terminal you should go back and look at your will and to say, all right, this is who's going to take care of me. This is who's going to make decisions for me. To not plan is burying your head in the sand, and it puts the burden on who's left. Right. And it puts the burden, and it gives you a kind of a poor outcome because we don't know what you want.
Right. And I think some of us, many of us know this, and it stresses us out too, but they're not. It just seems like many people, I'll just put it kind of this way, we don't think that shit's going to happen to us, right? And then wham, here comes life. And you're going, oh my gosh, I should have done this, that, and the other thing.
Well, just like in your book, we need to get comfortable with dying because there's not one person who's saying, well, I'm not going to do that. We are all going to die. Mm-hmm. And being able to talk about it actually makes it easier. And I know that sounds really strange, especially people are like, oh, that's depressing. I don't want to talk about it. Something. It's not that we're gonna like have parties over it, though some people do. We need to, you will live so much better. You will be alive. Like you say, you will have such a rich life when you deal with all your shit, as you said. Really you will. Right.
So self-care, take care of your finances, watch your relationships with yourself and with your family, for sure. And let's talk a little bit more about this. How do we get more comfortable with dying? Now, I may be a bit of an exception there because I'm one of the, the 4% or 5% of people that have a near-death experience.
Right.
What do you see there in terms of getting comfortable with dying?
Here's what it is. So actually, we're all going to die. That we get that. When you sort of get in touch with that, this whole thing we're doing on this planet isn't forever.
Right. Sort
of, you feel better about every day. Like I look outside my yard and I practice a gratitude every single morning. And I know many, that's one of the things that Wayne Dyer, I had the great pleasure of spending many years in his company because, same with Louise Hay, because I was a publicist. I worked for Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer was one of our authors. And I happened to go through pregnancies when I knew him and he had many kids. Sometimes I felt like, I don't know who was working for who because he imparted such amazing wisdom and both of them were never afraid of dying. And it was almost like, well, let's see what's going to happen next. You have a brighter outlook when you're positive. When you look at and you say, look at that amazing flower. It's January or it's February, excuse me. And I see the daffodils are pushing up. I love the way that bird is chirping on. Everything seems brighter. Everything seems happier. And I remember distinctly one time I was in New York. We were in a cab. I was in the cab with Louise and another girl. And we were just chit-chatting. And I said, I was really worried about getting her on this particular show, that I wanted to make it happen. I was worried. And I said, gosh, what did I say that she just corrected me? She says, this just never works. I just know it. I just am really worried. And she said, dear, never say can't. That's a bad affirmation. And I mean, same with Wayne Dyer. I wanted a radio show, and I'd be like, Wayne, I'm just trying so hard, and I'm so worried it's want to happen. And I remember him telling me, Jacqui, did you do everything you could? I go, absolutely. He goes, you need to let it go. Let the universe put it out there. It'll come to us if it was meant to be. And if it doesn't, he goes, that means there's something else around. Right. They were so comfortable with life.
Just letting life unfold, not from a passive standpoint. As he said, did you take the actions you wanted to take, right? You get off your ass, we get off our ass and we do things. And then after that, there's that point of trusting or surrendering. And just saying we can't control everything. We can control what we do. And then the outcomes from those sometimes happen and sometimes don't. Yeah, he was one of my favorite. I told you in 1982, probably, I think it was a sophomore in college, his book, Your Erroneous Zones.
Oh, yes. That's a good one.
I remember I had a psychology class and I was an accounting major, which that's a whole other podcast. Nothing against my finance or accounting people. I love you dearly, but a wrong turn, right?
Oh, I started there too.
I took this psych class. I remember with this guy, Dr. Greg Amore, and Greg was about 5 foot maybe, and he's a bodybuilder. He was huge, and he was just so cool. And he kind of looked like Wayne back then. You know, he had long hair, big sideburns. And we read that book, and I'm just like, and it was the first time I kind of had read anything like that. I'm like, man, are you kidding me? I probably should have switched my major to psych right then, although I went on and got the accounting degree that I never used. So we're going to talk more about Wayne. But yeah, that's just so important to kind of just trust that things are going to unfold the way they're going to unfold, right?
Right. And it's not a Pollyanna outlook, too, because some people are, oh, it's a Pollyanna. You're just telling everything just, you know.
Yeah, positive thinking. I hear it all the time.
It takes a lot of action with, you know, it's sort of like, you know, you get to a stop sign and some jerk, you know, pulls up to you, you know, and maybe whatever's happening. And you have, you know, again, and I remember, again, this is what Wayne used to tell me. He goes, you have the way you say words, like there's 3 words, he said, that can mean totally different. You can get up every morning and say, good God, morning. Or you could say, good morning, God. I mean, it's the same words and it's the same outlook. So you see this guy, you know, doing whatever on a bike, or you can send him a blessing. You can send, hey, well, you know, I hope you're having a great, maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they just got the worst news of their life. When you start not making it about you just have a better life. And a better life is a domino effect. And then you want to eat better and you want to reach out more and you just want to be you want to age better. Why is it
so hard for people to do that though? Why do we get mixed up? You know, I got the t-shirts, the Jackrabbit t-shirts, DLDSM, don't let dumb shit matter. You know, don't sweat the small stuff. I don't know if he was with Hay House. Who was that? Don't sweat the small stuff.
Stephen Covey, right?
No, Covey was Seven Habits.
I can't remember.
Richard, somebody?
I think you're right.
Anyhow, you remember, very popular book. So it's all the same thing. But why is it so hard for us sometimes, myself included still, I get wrapped around life's axle, so to speak. Why is it so hard for us not to just, and I was having this conversation with a guy in the gym this morning, and he's good, he gets it. Why is it so hard for us not to just enjoy this beautiful journey with its ups and with its downs? Why do you think people get so twisted?
I think it's a lot of habit. Habits are good habits and bad habits. You know, we have a bad habit of seeing the worst sometimes or complaining. I also believe in small doses of the news. Yes, you got to catch up when you can, once a week or something, a couple times. You got to know what's going on, of course.
Right.
You don't need a steady diet. And I kind of like, you know, if something you see in the news makes you feel bad or upset or just angry, well, what can you do? Yeah. And it doesn't have to be on a magnanimous scale. What can you do within your family, within your community, your neighborhood, you know?
And I think to that point too, Jacqui, and that's good. Let's talk about that for a minute. You know, the social media.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the phones and everything. And I'm working on book 4 right now. And I was just writing a scene the other day in a coffee shop. And I said, you know, I looked around, the lead character looks around at the people and their heads down, you know, thumbs popping on the screen. And I'm just thinking, you know, 10 or 15 years ago, if you're writing a book, that would not have been in there.
I know. I feel that you do wonder why.
How's that going to contribute? I'm cutting you off, but that's what.
Right.
How's that going to contribute? Like my dad's 91, my mom's 82, and all in all lived, you know, a pretty good life. I think they had their challenges, but they did a lot of things you talked about. You know, we got 8 kids, so there's always a little bit of relationship stuff going on with one another. They didn't have any of this growing up, you know, through their 40s and 50s and even as a youngster. this total addiction to social media. And as you know, 80% of it's negative and or fake.
Right.
How do you think that's going to influence people? And what should we be concerned about now?
I think it's a huge, huge influence, especially on our young people. I have teenage kids, and it's a constant struggle to their whole life, and then being stuck in a room going to school for the last year. Your whole life is in it. It's really small, even though you have access to so much. I think if we don't start doing less on social media and computer, constantly, we need to talk to people, get outside, smell fresh air. Yes. I love seeing how many kids ride bikes right now because it's like it's come back. It's amazing.
Read books.
Read books, yes. Reading books is, just painting. The first 2 or 3 months that my kids were kind of stuck at home and everything had now, you're taking AP biology and now you're not in a lab. You have to do it. She's like, I need to find baking soda. I need string, and they're making creations in your kitchen, which is neat. My daughter built a swing. Why? Just because she had the time. She wasn't there was nothing to do that day. And so she went down and I said, go down to Home Depot. You can do this. She built a swing. Another one took leaves off a palm tree that had fallen, started painting the leaves, the things that you just would never have the time. Those things have value. You're kind of introspective. It's quiet time. You're thinking. Yeah. You can't create ideas if you don't have hours every day of just blank mind, so to speak. Every morning I turn on just a, just like blank mind, like meditation, no, just background noise. And I just, as you said, stretch, because we're at that age where we need to. And the most amazing ideas come to me then. And take the pad out, write it down. I try to use paper and pen more than ever. Did you know that Wayne Dyer wrote every single book by hand?
Did he really?
He wrote every book by hand.
With pen and paper?
By pen and paper.
Oh my gosh.
At first I was like, no way.
Right now I was writing this morning for 2 hours at 5 o'clock or whatever. And oh my gosh. I like my journal. I certainly journal with pen and paper. Wow, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, someone had to transcribe it, obviously, but everything was written down.
So this is really cool, and we'll certainly summarize. We got more to go here. But I hope everybody that's listening right now is understanding what Jacqui's talking to you. She's got firsthand experience and research that's saying there are things that you should be doing right now, all the way up until you take your last breath, that are going to get you to age well, age healthier, age with more happiness and fulfillment, which is at the core of our whole Jackrabbit philosophy, and coming back to life. What do you think about the brain and the neurotransmitters? And there's so much out there about the dopamine and the serotonin and the oxytocin and all these things that are released from the brain that are good for us versus the other things, the stressors and those things. What's going on there, do you think?
The use it or lose it philosophy is absolutely true, but it's more than just using it. It's how you're using it. Mm-hmm. Routine is not great for the brain. Mm-hmm. We need to make new connections. That's pretty much standard. And if you look at any kind of cognitive or memory site or researches, routine is not good for brains. Really? Learning new things is amazing. Absolutely. You're never too old to learn new things. That was one of the things I loved about Louise. I'd stop by her house to drop off something, get her ready for a radio show, whatever it was. And whenever I went into her house, she was always doing something new. She was painting. I remember she had a diction coach for the longest time. I'm like, why? Because why not? Yeah. She was learning to sing. She had a piano and I used to play the piano. She's like, do you play the piano? I want to hear it. She was always learning.
Yeah. How long did she live for, Louise?
She got to, I believe, 92. 92.
Wow. And Wayne?
She used to always say she was going to die at 93. I'm going to die at 93.
Wayne was in his 80s, maybe?
He was actually in his 70s. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's in his 70s.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, I think, the more, and I had a guy on the podcast prior to this one, Dr. Andy Newberg, and he does a lot of brain scan research. He's in Philadelphia, and he's really shifted now towards what happens in the brain. He's written about 10 books, what God does to the brain, and, the words we use can change our brain. He studies a lot of people in spiritual reflection or prayer and what happens in the brain. I think it's really important that we understand, as you said, what's good for the brain. So I want to make the distinction for people because there's so much out there about habits now, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit, and James Clear, Atomic Habits last year. I know he did great on the speaking circuit, and I like his work a whole lot. So routine versus habits.
Really different.
Yeah.
Really
So make
different.
that distinction because I don't want people to go, wait, you just said we have to have good habits for healthy and exercise and everything else. And then you tell me
Right.
routine's no good.
Habits are just things that get you to your goals, like specific things in life, saying eating well
Right.
or getting to, pursuing a passion,
Or
or
morning
I want
exercise.
to get good at playing the piano. You have to have good habits. Routine is I sit in the same spot every single day at the dinner table, or I take the same path, or I can only sit on the left side of the pew in church, or
Right.
only go. That is routine.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and where we only watch a show at 6 o'clock on Tuesday. We need to break
Mix
it
it
up. I
up.
mean, and that's what conversation is like right now. We don't have a script.
Right.
We are talking about so many things.
Sure.
It's amazing that conversations without video,
Right.
radio, are coming back. I don't know if you've heard of that Clubhouse, that new app.
Oh, I did hear something about it. I don't
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
lot of knowledge about it, but I have seen it popping up on Facebook.
Well, I found what the most interesting thing was. They act like it was a new. I love it. I think it's a great idea. What's so interesting is that it's about conversations without video. So, like a radio show. And I thought, how interesting that just random people, whatever topic you want to talk about, share, we just miss the connections with people. And
Right.
connections with people is the most important thing in life.
Right.
It really
Right. And a
is.
lot of times on video, which is the transfer, what is it, 80% of our information now is transferred through video. There's so many other possible distractions that we're missing, some of the message, some of the wording.
Absolutely. I mean, look, we all love the internet, and God knows I absolutely love to find an interesting trivia. It has its place, but like anything, like chocolate, I love it, but I can't eat it 24/7. It's just not good for us. And that's sort of what social media and everything else is about. It has done so many amazing things. I see what it has done for some of my clients. I once had a lady with one of the worst cases of MS I'd ever seen. And I followed her for years and years trying to figure out at one point, the only thing she had just some of her symptoms, again, very severe, where she was confined to a bed and she basically, her eyes could move, but nothing else could. And she was in a lot of pain. There was two things that made her life like bearable.
Mhm.
And one of them was fresh fruit, oranges, I remember, and really good chocolate. So those, I mean, it seems so, well, who can, but it was so important. And I ended up moving her to a community where I'm like, I want to make sure she gets that,
Right.
which because that's all that really mattered. And the other thing was we were able to use like all the amazing like Alexa and Google, all the voice activated things so she could turn on her TV,
Mm-hmm.
be in control of her channel. Because before that, she'd have to wait for someone to come in and check on her so she could change.
Right.
But through her voice, that's all she had was her voice and her eyes.
Right.
So I love that. So often we're helping seniors live a more independent life by great technology. So I love technology.
Sure. So technology is really a double-edged sword as
It
in
is.
terms of aging well.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Technology can help us to not age well, to age poorly, and it can also support us to age well. Yeah.
Well, good habits, right?
Yeah, that's it. I always say to people, I love the brain. I like to read about it. Sometimes, in reading about a guy, I get lost because it gets too technical, and I don't have that. So I always say to people, I want to know what the brain does. I don't need to know how it does it. I don't need
Right.
to know the regions and the lobes and the synapses and everything else. Just tell me if a human being does this, what happens in the brain, and is it good or bad? And the way I often describe it to people in some of the workshops is say, and this is the way I think about it. There's a guy in my head, right? Every morning when I wake up, and he's got a shovel or a pitchfork or whatever. And he's got two piles next to him. He's got a pile of all the really good neurotransmitters that he can dump into my system. And he's got a pile of, stress and everything else and crap. And sometimes I just make that distinction. It's just a good model for me in my uneducated brain science, I guess, just to look and go, okay, Dan, what are you going to do so that this dude picks up the shovel and dumps some of that good stuff in there? Are you going to meditate? Are you going to crank out some of your to-do list? Are you going to call a friend? Are you going to send a text? Are you going to say some prayers? what are you going to do? Or are you going to think about what you did wrong or what could possibly go wrong with clients or why COVID's killing your revenue because there's no speaking events? It's just a good way for me, I think. And you tell me, I think it's supporting me in aging well, where I can have that strategy to catch myself when we're not aging well and say, okay, got to go this way, you know?
I totally agree. I mean, the brain is some of the most fascinating things. I mean, as you said, I think we all read a lot about the brain, and there's the very scientific, and then there's the research, and there's disease. I find that everyone's brain, I mean, what do they say? We don't access barely any of our brain. And I feel some people access a lot more
Yeah.
than the average person. I think we're capable of almost anything we put our mind to. And I know people don't believe that. Oh, he's really smart or he had advantages. I think that's one of the greatest things. I got so lucky that at 29 years old, I landed on Hay House's doorstep because I had no idea. I always wonder what my life would be like had I not been inundated with having to read, because that was my job, read all those books, see all those events, go to all those speaking, and interact with people who had figured it out late in life. And I have the advantage of being given it at 29 years old.
And what year? I don't want to, I know you got to be sensitive around a woman's age here. But when you were 29, because, I'm thinking all the books I've read over the years, gosh, I'll bet 70% of them were probably published through Hay House. What year was that when you went to work for them?
1997. I'm 53. I'm okay with my age, right?
Oh, so, cool. Yep. You look great. Yep. So 93, I know even in the 80s and 90s. 97, right. 97. In the 80s and 90s, though, and even in the early 2000s, and still even today, there's that stigma of self-help is, a bunch of, Southern California.
Oh, yeah.
Woo. I see what you're saying right now and when people say that, they say to me, sometimes they say, oh, wait, are you like a motivational speaker? Are you one of those self-help people? And they say it with that little edge. And I used to kind of get pissed off. And now I just kind of smile and I say, wait, I guess, I mean, if that label fits for you. But I said, is there anybody that when you wake up and your feet hit the floor every morning, they're standing right there to help you be the best that you can be and move through the shit at life and develop a big, bold vision? Is there somebody standing right there to help you every day? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, do you want that? Well, of course. Well, then who gets it? Self-help. So get off the words and just understand, what is it that we're doing? It's crazy.
We can start aging well from birth. Whether my kids have liked it or not, I have indoctrinated them with positive outlook and picking yourself up and finding your goals. And believe me, sometimes they're just like, the teenagers, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You get the eye rolls?
Oh yeah. I get eye rolls and
one of these. I go up.
Sometimes a hair flip to go with it, right?
Oh, goodness gracious.
But, I do see it paying off in the long run. Not something, again, Wayne imparted on me how he fed that to his kids. And his kids didn't want any more of it than mine do some days. But it certainly, when you have tough times, and God knows the last year has been challenging for everybody in some way, especially these teenagers who have really had the short end of the stick of going back to school. I've had to help them dig deep to appreciate every day what they do have. Right. And you don't have control over everything. But you have control over how you respond to it. Yeah. And that's a key message that we hear often, but we don't listen to it and accept it and believe it.
We don't internalize it, right?
No, I mean, the first thing you should do when you wake up is, what are you grateful for? You better find it. If you can't think of, your day is going to change immensely if every morning you wake up and say, I am grateful for. Yeah. That is a key habit.
Yeah.
You will find amongst most successful people in any area of life.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's so important when you, as you said, when your eyes open, feet hit the floor, if you're blessed with those physical capabilities or even not, as you come out of that sleep, it's kind of like, what is that first couple of sentences that you're saying to yourself? I think it's so important. I know it is. I mean, I know in the fall, and I've said this on I was definitely depressed October, November after this. My wife would go to work, and I'm in my office in a 4-bedroom house by myself all day, getting no energy from other people, and I'm an extrovert. the business was, anybody who's a speaker this year, everybody says, heck, it was a rough year. And man, I just got into that spiral of that crappy self-talk, and thankfully out of it. But yeah, you really have to pay attention to it. You really have to be conscious of that, right?
You do. You bring up a good point because, ultimately all my clients, all my clients die. That's what I do. I mean, it may be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Sometimes it's hours or days or weeks. I had so many clients die this year, obviously because of COVID. And in the month of November and December, every single one of them did. And, I think I'm lucky that this is my 8th year I'm doing this, because if it was my first year or second, I might have been like, I'm changing my professions. But what I do find out is the ones that did die that I was able to talk to before, if they had a great life, they were like, this is just my time. This is what was written this is what was written. We all have a little card. We come out of the womb and our card says, okay, 40 years, 90 years, 100 years, 10 years, whatever it is. It's written, it's signed, like that. If something crazy happens to you, it was written. That's just your destiny. So the ones that were hardest it's the family members who weren't prepared, who had regrets, who had guilt, just didn't get to finish. And that was hard, but I was never depressed by that. I'm an extrovert too. And so I need to see people, and not being able to go out to restaurants and stuff. That was driving me crazy because I love parties and things. And because I get a charge out of interacting with people, but I look at it as like, this was their time, unfortunately. I sent them a blessing. I wanted to make sure everything had the most value. But then there was also the amazing ones that were supposed to die and they didn't. They just, because it wasn't their time for whatever reason. And maybe they're the ones that give us hope. To keep digging in and finding your passion. But I hope that the people that are left, if you've had a loved one pass this year for whatever reason, because there's many reasons besides COVID, I hope that you can get in a place where, with my mom, we were close. Man, I didn't realize the influence she had on me, how my entire life was driven by so much for her. And I was one of those kids that at 18, I was like, I need all my independence and I can do it on my own and I don't want any. So I always was pushing her away, even though we were close. I needed to do it on my own. Interesting enough, I was the one that helped her at the end with those type of things, the financial and making the big decisions. But what I hope you realize is that you have an opportunity at 50 and at 60 to be amazing still. Louise did not write her first book, You Can Heal Your Life, which is one of the most prolific books in the world still, until she was in her 50s. She didn't form her Hay House company, which is huge, all these, 30 some years later, until her late 50s and early 60s. You are not dead at 40 and 50.
What did she do alive? I don't even know.
Pardon me?
What did Louise do? I didn't realize she didn't start that until 50s and 60s.
Oh yeah, she had an interesting life. She was a fashion model in her early 20s and teens. She had a really tough life, and a very abusive childhood, which she talks about in all her books. Yeah. So I'm not giving away any secrets. And she was a fashion model. She got married young. She had a very abusive relationship and got out of that, and pretty much was a failure at a lot of things in her life, and her self-esteem from her abuse from as a child, and then in her marriages and in relationships, she sort of figured out how to heal her life. And then that's when she started sharing it with people and put it down. And then it kind of hit. She was one of, she had something, I don't know if you remember this. This was back in the 80s. She did something called hay rides in Los Angeles. And that was, she would get on, she made like a float and go down and had everyone with HIV and AIDS. It was a time when nobody wanted to touch anybody or be close to it. It's very interesting. We have this pandemic, and then, people forget about it in the 80s. I grew up in San Francisco, where people would get on the buses with full-blown AIDS, and people would get off the buses. They were so scared, not having the information that we have now. But she was a pioneer in the down and out. And right to the end of her life, she was always had a pet philanthropy. Mama's Kitchen was really important to her in San Diego for feeding abused women because of her life. She didn't talk a lot about it in those ways, but she has something called the Hay Foundation that specifically, collects money for these important charities that she believed in, So You can do a lot. And she had more impact in her last half of her life than the first,
Yeah. So that's a great point that you make that. And I guess it comes back to that, it ain't over till it's over.
It ain't over till it's over.
A lot of times that's used in ball games, right? They talk about, the final home run or the touchdown, but it really applies to us in life. And if you think about it, when you think about it, there's so many people that have created wonderful things, later in their life. And I know when we were talking, you had one lady, Grace, right? Your Grace is
right.
Bring them up. Tell us a little bit, because I want people to think about that. And you said something earlier in our conversation too, when we're in our 40s and our 50s, is the career that you're in, is it really feeding your soul and nourishing your energy?
Mm-hmm.
And, or are you just in it because, I got the benefits, I got 6 more years. So that's really important. That's really important too.
Oh, it is.
It's really important.
I met Grace, I work with hospitals and skilled nursing a lot. Hospital called me saying, hey, we have this lady, she's fallen and we think she needs to go to assisted living. They don't know all the time. That's one of the things is that. So I go to the skilled nursing and, it's 2 to a bed and there's the curtain and I'm like, Grace, and I'm like trying to be polite. I kind of ease the curtain back and she's like, honey, come in. And I'm like, oh, this one's a firecracker. Yeah. She's sitting up in bed and she's in skilled nursing and most people stay in their, their gowns. She's fully dressed like she's about to go to dinner. She's got her legs kind of up and she's reading a book, no TV's on. And she's like, who are you?
And how old is she? 91?
She's 91 at the time, right?
God bless.
And no, actually she's 92 at the time. And then, so we start talking and she's living on her own. She'd fallen, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, well, I think it's time for me. I need to go to, I just need to go to the nursing home. That's what she called it, which is not what we call it. They don't exist anymore like that.
Right, yeah.
And I said, Grace, you are not ready for the nursing home. I go, you need, and we kind of figured out what she needed.
She liked you right away then, didn't she?
She needed company. She needed some help in the house with the laundry. She was going up and down stairs. Her house was pristine. And I was like, well, who cleans your house? I do. I'm like, okay, you need to give it up. You need some help, a little bit of help.
Yeah.
Got a little bit of help. And so I started visiting her over the next 2 years. I eventually placed her and she has passed since. And I went to her funeral and it was exactly the way she wanted. She was a planner. So as I was visiting her, I used to bring her lunch sometimes. And she always called them Gracisms because she had lived an amazing life. She had a great love story. Her love was Johnny. And she used to tell me all these stories. They would walk every single day. She lived near the beach. She'd walk every single day for like an hour to 2 hours, hand in hand down to the beach every day. And then he dies. And I'm like, oh my God, Grace, how did you go on? And she kind of looked at me like, okay, silly, right? And she said, I decided right from the start, after Johnny died, that I had the choice of being unhappy or seeing the funny in all things. And I was like, that's a really interesting statement. The funny, not the happy, not the grateful, the funny.
Yeah.
So anything that happened, she made it funny. Like one time, I don't think I told you this one because I wasn't sure if it was radio appropriate. This is how she saw the funny.
Appropriate here.
And I don't know if first of all, I'm not sure. A lot of the words she used, we don't use these words anymore because they're just sort of outdated. But the word tart, do you understand what the word tart means?
I think, but go ahead.
Once upon a time, if your mother, if you didn't think you were a proper young lady, remember she's in her 90s, you were called a tart. You were kind of like a floozy. That's really what it meant.
Yeah.
Now, when you're young, you're a tart, right? So she told me, she goes, she's having some physical things that weren't so pleasant happening her. Right. And she goes, honey, first you're a tart, then you fart, right? Meaning that you're this hot little lady at one time, and then this is where you end up at the end of your life with all these bodily functions. And I thought,
gas unexpectedly and uncontrollably, right?
She was hilarious like that, and so she was seeing the funny in all things, and she had been diagnosed with, I think, some form of cancer at the end of her life, and she was like, she didn't want to go in, and I go, well, they keep calling. She goes, what are we saving here? She was about value of life. And that's a whole nother topic of just because we can keep someone alive. Sure. That's something we need to teach in middle school. It's just because we can keep some heart beating. There's no life. You're not alive. And she was of that philosophy. Again, her choice how to die. She was 90. By then she was 93. And what are we doing? She's like, no, I'm not treating it.
Yeah.
It'll just happen the way it happens. You know, I want quality.
Yeah, I think that's really important for people to kind of put that under the microscope and say, again, are we just living? Is the body still working with the aid of machines or drugs or whatever it might be? Or is this person, QOL, right? Quality of life, is it really there? So that's a good point too. I would encourage everybody to kind of keep that in mind.
Well, again,
and plan for that as well, right?
Well,
this conversation's great for me because my to-do list is going to have so much more on it right now. Yeah, I got to plan my funeral. I got to tell them where they're going to sprinkle ashes. I got to update my will. You gave me a lot of work to do on this call, and I thank you for it. Now I lost. Where were we going?
Well, don't forget to plan to age well.
Oh yeah, the planning to age well. Oh no, I lost kind of what I was going to say to you.
You got to-do list and
the to-do list. Wow, I mean, you've just given me so much to think about now. With Grace and everybody, really.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many Graces in my life. I mean, a World War II. Oh, wow. Talking to them. Yeah. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Talk about grit, flexibility, humility, adaptability. It's the cornerstone of their life. I mean, they are just so grateful.
I mean, that brings up a great point. Do you think that as, me at 57, you at 53, and we've certainly studied, seems like we've invested in ourselves to live well or to age well. But overall, do you think that the people from that generation have more resilience, perseverance than the generations that are now moving, the people now that are 25 to 40, let's say? What are your thoughts on that?
Unfortunately, yes. And again, I don't believe it has to stay that way. But the circumstances of the greatest generation and the silent generation, with the silent is in the 80s and the early 90s. And it's because, first of all, they had a very simple life. And so they went through great wars. Right. They had a ration, food and supplies. That really changes you. If you've ever been poor and then you weren't, you can't take the poor out of your soul. Wow. It's just there. You feel it, you're past it. Even if you have a lot of resources, it changes you. And I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, so I didn't grow up, wealthy or anything like that. But guess what? We always had a meal, even though sometimes I was one of 4 kids. We're very working class, and we didn't have a lot of resources, but we had the things that counted in life, which was stability and love and a really intact family and expectations. Yeah. And we also had freedom, which unfortunately kids don't have as much. I try to give my kids as much freedom as I can, but it's really difficult in today's world when it's such a global world, the access that you have to constantly teach them. But we have a more comfortable life, and which is wonderful in a lot of ways, but it also kind of takes our edge off us. Yeah. And unless you've had something really terrible happen in your life, I'm not sure the grit has been developed.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think with that too, Jacqui, that's a good point. What I've seen is the culture when we were growing up, and this is not right or wrong, it's just stating fact, my observation.
Yeah.
Man, you had a strong appreciation and respect for your parents, your aunts and uncles, just older people. As we were young growing up, we had a respect, and I don't see that as strong now in younger people. And some younger people listen and may be pissed off, and I'm not extrapolating that across everybody.
No, of course not.
I'm kind of making a statement, and if anybody's offended, that's okay, and I'm not perfect either. That really, I'm sure there's a lot of that in terms of aging well, that respect, as you said, for one another.
It's funny because I have been really hardcore about that with my kids, and you would expect that oh my God, I have these model children of respect and stuff. I think with outside world, absolutely, Right. But sometimes even our kids today they're different, and sometimes they've said things that I'm just like, oh my God, had I said it to my mother, there might have been a quick hand come up, but that's not, and I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, but it was just a different way. But I think a lot of times I've sat down with my kids. I have an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, and especially the 18-year-old who's about to journey out into the world soon. And I'm just like, respecting people and being kind. Again, back to Wayne Dyer, because I used to tell this to my kids all the time. I said, and he told me, if you have a choice of being kind or right, pick kind. You will never regret it. Yeah. I've told that to my kids so many times when there's been a bully, a nasty kid, girls are really mean. Even when I knew that my child was in the right, I was saying, be nice. Don't be a doormat, but look at the person's situation, or be nice. Don't be a doormat and don't let it eat you up. Being a nice person goes a long way. Not a doormat. I am not a doormat. I am a nice person. And I also don't take things personally like I did when I was younger. It's just so not about me.
No, I think that's cool. Message when we talk about LWL, my kids would say, lead with love.
Yes.
That's what I often offer them is just lead. And sometimes even on a text in the morning, I'll end with it, lead with love. I think it's so important.
That's a good one. I like it.
It's so hard. Well, that's your belief. Yeah. If you think it's hard, it's going to be hard. And I get it. Sometimes people are knuckleheads and you don't feel like loving.
Right.
As you said, that's probably the time you should. That's the best choice.
Just be tolerant, or just say, okay, the agree to disagree mantra needs to come back. Let's agree to disagree, but we agree on the walk on the beach. So let's take that walk on the beach.
That is needed. And that's needed again. Everything that we're talking about, this is great, is all connected to the individual aging well. So the one thing, let's go. We'll go for a couple more minutes, and then I'll ask you to kind of wrap up, summarize, and maybe give us 2 or 3 of the key things that you would pass along to somebody that they should be concerned about for aging well. Just kind of wrap it up. Mm-hmm. But you talked just a minute ago about not taking things personally, and I know I struggled with that for years, and there's probably some residue still around. What would you say to somebody who would go, oh my gosh, Jacqui, I take everything personally and I know it's not right. How can I get better in that?
Okay. So now throw out a little lead, right?
Drum roll.
Ready? Work on yourself. It's something inside you. Work on yourself. When you have a problem with somebody else, and that's really what taking it personally is, work on yourself. Mm-hmm. What is it why does something about someone, why did you take it personally when I said, you've come into work 3 times this week. Work on yourself.
Right.
You're upset because it's right. You have a problem with time management and it's affecting your life.
Sure.
So you've been fired before, or you didn't get that promotion. Work on yourself. Look at it as like that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do the work. And it's interesting you say that, because oftentimes it's when we take something personally, we're not kind of holding up the mirror and say, how might I be contributing to that feedback or that statement they just gave me?
Right.
And I agree. That's pretty powerful.
And sometimes if you look within yourself and you're like, something, this isn't a true statement for whatever reason, and this isn't about me. So then you're just like, well, I'm going to give it back to you, and I hope you work on yourself. Or I hope I'm going to send you the best thoughts and blessings or whatever your mantra is, and say, I want you to be better. So I had great colleagues at Hay House, and there's always big company, and there's always I remember one time we had someone who just didn't really fit the culture, and I remember I used to take walks every day at lunch. They were great about letting us run, walk, whatever. There's showers. We had longer lunches than probably we should, but it was all about productivity, right?
Sure.
And I remember one day walking with a colleague, and she said, so-and-so needs to leave. It's causing X problems. And I said, she goes, let's do it. Let's do a manifestation for them. And I was like, oh, she was very new agey at the time. I was like, all right, let's do this. Right. So
sure.
Like, let's manifest an amazing new job for her. And she's going to be more fulfilled, and it's at a location, and she's going to get paid more, and it's going to work out great.
Right.
So that's an interesting way of dealing with someone who's really putting a monkey wrench in your work life.
Yeah.
You're hoping they find a better opportunity for them and take them out of your life.
That's a little bit of kindness right there, right?
Right. And that's not a Pollyanna. It's just like, so there's 2 ways. You can be in a big fight all day long.
Yeah.
Angry, go home, complain, bitch to your loved one. They're tired of hearing about it. You're losing productivity. You can't get where you need to be. So let's work on yourself and have them,
Yeah. when you're talking about this, the Pollyanna and the unicorns and everything else.
Yeah.
There's a guy, and I just wrote his name down in notes. His name's Masaru Emoto. And
oh yeah, I know.
You know him, the Japanese guy that studied
with him.
He studied the water molecules.
I actually met him, and it was interesting because we had a big I Can Do It event, and he was.
So tell everybody about Dr. Emoto then. Listen,
okay.
everybody.
So that was one was challenging.
I'm looking at it a whole lot more, and I'm going to show you right where the hell is it? Here it is, right here.
I have to really go back a decade or so, but so we have this new author, and I remember Reed would come in, and he would say, "Okay, here's your new book. We're going to be doing a book with Dr. Emoto," and he looks at the water, and I was like, well, that's a new one. Okay, I done it all, right? Done it all. Nothing could shock me. And I was like, all right, I'm open to anything. I remember one time the New York Times was like doing a piece, and they were like hammering at Louise, this stuff is all mumble. And I go, well, do you believe in it? And I said,
yeah.
Healthy skeptic. At the time, I was a healthy skeptic. I was open to anything.
Sure.
I became a believer because so much of it worked. But anyways, so Dr. Emoto comes into my life, and he doesn't speak a word of English at the time. I don't know if he does now. Not a word. So I have to meet him.
Yeah. I think he's since passed, maybe in 2015 or something.
Okay, yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah. So
because I was studying. Yeah. So tell us about, and then I'll show you something.
So we're in Las Vegas, of all places, and I'm going to meet him, and he has an entourage of translators. So I'm told, you got to look at him, don't look at the translator. And I was like, look at him, don't look at the translator, right? So he was amazing. He was just it felt like being in the presence of like shimmery, like spiritual enlightenment. I mean, I know it sounds so new agey, but like he had something about him that was
perfect to me. Yeah.
And, I always met them to understand what they were promoting, because I had to go out there and explain this to, at the time, mainstream media. Now it's super easy to do this kind of promoting, Oh,
yeah. I'm sure you're talking to, Good Morning America and Oprah and ABC News and everybody else, right?
Right.
And so, why should we have this person? Well,
right. Because it sounded so crazy. Now it's totally embraced. I worked with Hicks, Abraham, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So I always said it was about the message.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the delivery mechanism.
Right.
Just concentrate on the message, because if the message is making and healing our planet and healing people and making people better.
Oh, God, yeah.
How can you say no to it?
God, yeah. I'm with you.
So that was my experience with, that was a very brief. I remember having that conversation one-on-one. I can see it in my mind's eye.
Right.
We were in Las Vegas.
Right.
And at the hotel with the Venice. We were at Venice.
The Venetian?
Venetian, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yep.
And he was just like so polite and just looking me straight in the eye and talking to me and just explaining how this came into being, his whole philosophy of looking at the water, and it was just amazing. It was watching
the response. And that somebody sent it to me about a month ago, an email or something, the images of the frozen water crystals and all. Mm-hmm. And I started getting, I'm looking there. I'm going, what the hell, frozen water?
I know.
All right, let me take a look at this. I've gotten into it more, and I've even in terms of self-care, the words that we use, the language that we use. So this Dr. Emoto would study the frozen water crystals as they reacted, right, in their vibration. He would freeze them to different sounds, music, words, and those things. And anybody listening, I would check it out. I think it was the Magic in the Water or something of that nature. He had a couple books.
So I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah.
But some of the, most of the geographic shapes of these frozen water crystals, when there were symphonies, music played, when Mother Teresa was mentioned, the words love and healing and all these things were versus I will kill you, Adolf Hitler, all these things. I was like blown away. And then the interesting thing that really caught my eye, and I knew this, but in the article that I read, it said, and oh, by the way, the human body, 70% water, earth, 70% water, human brain, 75 or 80% water. So I have jackrabbit, like mugs, and I'm going tomorrow to visit my dear brother-in-law, who is one of the most wonderful people I've ever met on the planet, my sister, and he's living courageously with ALS. And just this morning at 6:00 in the morning, I don't know if you can see those words, I wrote in black and then outline healing and love. And I'm just going to drop this on him. And every now and again, him and I will have a Guinness together, and Guinness has water in it. So maybe we'll put the Guinness in here. But I just thought, you know what? Why? And they showed the Lourdes, the water from the crystals at Lourdes, France, where so many people have been cured. So yeah, we're off on a tangent, and a good one, and a good one. Yeah, so you said to come back to the message, and I sent you these. I don't know if you got them yet, but my other book, I Met Jesus for a Miller Lite. There's a point in there towards the end when this character who's an NFL football player and he gets concussions and he's struggling in life and all, and he kind of puts that question to, I don't give it away, to Jesus. But Jesus is very much immersed in this world, right? Drives a Camaro, has an iPhone. And, he said, should people go back to church? And Jesus just says, come back to the message. The rest will take care of itself.
Right.
It's so important, right? For us just to come back. Well, let's go into wrap-up mode, my dear friend Jacqui. We probably could go for another couple hours.
I know. Told you, talk for hours.
Yeah, and we'll do another part two. We'll do part two. And I look forward to meeting you in person when I get out to California. So in terms of aging well, I always wrap up and I say, listen, here's the thing, Jacqui. You're going to have lunch with somebody, right? Lunch, breakfast, glass of wine, younger per 20, 34, whatever. This is kind of how I end the podcast. What 2 or 3 pieces of wisdom, you're never going to see them again. What 2 or 3 pieces of wisdom would you give them and say, hey, you really want to pay attention to this? So whatever you're going to say now really is about aging well. So all of us right now, Jacqui, bring it back and give us 3 or 4 things and say, with all your heart and your conviction, because you're in service to us, just say, hey, I love you. You got to be doing these things.
I would say for aging well, pursue your passion, whatever your age is, and whatever you think you can do. If you want to do it, do it. And you don't have to make a career out of it. You can pursue something just for the sheer joy of it. Second thing is plan to die. Plan it. It's going to happen. So get all the nuts and bolts, financial documents, wills, durable power of attorney. And if all these acronyms mean nothing to you, that means you need someone to help you. Seek best professional help in every aspect of financial planning and durable power of attorney. And think about, if you pursue assisted living, use an expert. It is not a geography choice. There's so many things that go in it. I could tell you 2 hours of why you need to use an expert. There's so many. Use someone with professional credentials and education behind them. Aging well is not a 1-week event. It's an entire lifetime. So get all your documents in order, get your body in order, get your mind in order, and get your relationships in order. Those are your 4 things: financial, body, mind, and relationships.
Relationships, right? And
get all those in order.
And don't be afraid to die.
Don't. You live
if you don't want to now, it's okay.
Nobody wants to die right now or anything, but
nobody wants to, and it's okay that's going to happen. What's the website in case people want to get in touch with you and they may need some help?
Absolutely. You can find us on agingwellpartners, that's with an S.com. We do a lot of consultations for all the things we've talked about. Aging in place at home, we do it all. We have an expert and a resource for anything you may need, and that's the whole thing. And we, since my placement company is Care Patrol, and I have one here in California and one in Florida. There's tons of them. We also partner with Certified Senior Advisor, which I am also. So we have, for the last 7 years, we have pulled together the best resources in almost any part of the country. Happy to share a resource with you. That's what's really most important to us, is just getting the word out about aging well and working with the best resources out there.
Right.
I thank you so much for your
opportunity. Sure. No, it's absolutely.
I love your book. Again, Back to Life. It was amazing. And I can't wait for the next one. Although I have to say, your title of I had Jesus and I had Miller Lite. I think I'm more of an IPA girl. I'm not going to lie to you.
I met Jesus for Miller Lite. I like my IPAs too. We just the Bader boys grew up kind of on Miller Lite. So.
I get it. We're craft beer out here, so I know.
And the older you get, Miller Lite's a little easier on the waistline than the IPAs, I guess. Anyhow, listen, you are in service. You're a beautiful soul doing great work, and certainly gave me a lot to think about. And I'm assuming an awful lot to think about for our audience, Jacqui. So thanks very much. I wish you and your husband and the girls all the best, and I trust our paths will cross again. For everybody else, until our next episode of Back to Life podcast, just make sure you get out there and you come back to life and you do and you think in a way that brings you more happiness and resilience and fulfillment, because ultimately that's what we're here for. Take care.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on another episode of Back to Life, Stories of Resilience. Be sure to share this episode with your people and connect with me on my social media platforms. You can also visit www.dannybader.com to get some cool Jackrabbit t-shirts and support the vision to end ALS, as well as my books and my online trainings. So until next time, I am certain the powerful perspectives you heard will inspire you to make some changes to how you think about your life, begin to experiment with some new actions, and create more happiness and fulfillment in your life, because that is what you are here for, right?